Does free will exist? Yes or no? Do we have free will? Yes or no? The answer is yes and no. Free will does not exist for your ego, your identity, your personhood self. You see, your ego, your identity self is an extension of the source of itself. As I've said before, this extension of the source that we call the ego, personhood, identity, is limited. It's not that which thinks, it's that which is being thought. It's not that which takes actions, it's that which is an action. The thought is an action. Physical action is obviously an action. But these things are not being done by the ego because the ego is part of that action. The source of ego, the source of mind, that's what is free. That's where the free will resides. It's that which the extension of itself, the ego, the mind, reduces back to, such as in deep sleep. Or when you're daydreaming, when you're just not aware of anything, you're just somewhere else. You see, you cannot experience the lack of that which is fundamental to being. Yet you can experience the lack of the ego. You can experience the lack of your current identity. You can experience the lack of your thoughts because they are not fundamental to being. They change all the time. They are malleable. They are observed. I used to eat chicken. I used to love eating chicken. And now I'm vegan. So that wasn't my fundamental self, that ego identity. No identity is your essential self. The true identity, if we had to say the word identity, would be that pure self, which is beyond or before the extension of itself that we call the ego. So free will does not exist for the mind, for the ego. Now, because the ego, because it's an extension of the source, an extension of that which is truly free, that which is so free it allows for the appearance of ego, because it's an extension of it, it also has some of the qualities of the source, such as that knowledge of free will. So the ego believing it has free will or free will exists isn't completely false because it does exist. It just doesn't exist for it. The confusion is the ego believing free will exists for itself. No, the free will exists, yes, but for the source of itself. That's what one on their journey as a person can come to awaken to see. Because the source of the ego is the real doer, to use a word doer, but it's not really doing like a body would do things. But because it's the real doer, to use a word, then the ego also thinks it's the doer too of actions. But really it isn't. Yes, your identity is not doing the actions that it believes it is. This belief right now of there is a me holding this retractable phone holder, that belief or experience is a nice experience, but it's not the source of that which is experiencing it, of course. That which is experiencing it is distinct from it, naturally. You see, when we take ourselves to be the ego, we contract the vastness of our true being into the so-called senses. Oh, I can feel sense in my hand, therefore I am located to my hand. I can feel sense in my leg, therefore I'm located to my leg. I can feel sense in my back, therefore I'm located to my back. This object that we call a body, this is what I'm located to. This is what happens when we reduce our free being to the belief that we are this extension of itself, this ego. But when we take a step back, widen our perception, take our perception to a higher vantage spot, we see that actually the sensations in this leg, the sensations in the hand are being experienced, yes. But so is too the sight of a tree. So is too the sight of the sky. Why should I reduce what is me just to that of the sensation of touch? That's bias. Why not use the sensation of seeing? Because everything I see is intimately in my experience. Seeing is not at a distance from me. Look at this yourself. Notice anything you are looking at is not at a distance from you in terms of seeing itself. Yes, there's a belief that is at a distance from you when you go with the bias of touch, of feeling being what you are, or where you are located, I should say. But seeing as a experience is intimate with you. You don't have to walk up and catch seeing. I talk about this a lot more in my course, actually. I break this down, all the 5 senses. And so, yes. So this is what happens when we reduce ourselves to the ego. Again, there's nothing wrong with this. We're supposed to, when I say supposed to, it's inevitable to have the belief that we are limited beings, humans. This is fine. This helps us become fully human. That sense of limitation, which births the sense of desperation, or the sense of, I need to do things now. That's good. I need to do things now because I'm limited. We need that sense. If we just thought we're going to live forever, we could become really lazy and not care about anything and not really live. So we need this idea of time, this concept of time, this limitation. But at the same time, what's so beautiful, my fellow expression of consciousness, is we are also that single consciousness. Why do I say single consciousness? Well, my friends, what are you without your mind? A sincere question to you as always. What are you without your mind? Okay, what am I without my mind? Now, I hope you said words to the effect of, well, I can't know anything without the mind. Because that would be correct. Of course, you cannot know anything without the mind, objectively. What we call knowing occurs in the mind. Such as in deep sleep, again, there is no attachment to a mind. There's no seeing of a mind. There's no belief of a mind. Thus, there is no mind. Thus, there's no ego self. There is no you. All your memories disappear in deep sleep. All your pains and your happiness disappears in deep sleep. So without the mind, this ego that creates the belief or the extension, this apparent separation between a you and a me, without this ego, we are all one. It's impossible, I put it to you, to assert, to suggest that the source of yourself and the source of myself and all 7 billion of us is individual. You couldn't possibly know that. You couldn't possibly know that. But using reasoning, if something has no dimensions to it, my friends, if something has no size, no shape, no color, that which cannot be perceived, that which we can only talk about but not consciously be, because it's before the conscious mind. It's the source of the conscious mind. To assert that that could have parts is a complete belief. A complete belief. Now, one could say, yeah, well, it's a belief to say that it's one as well. That's a fair comment. All I can say to that is, again, if something is dimensionless, then by definition, it has no location. It's not anywhere. It's not a thing. It's not an object. And that source of us is dimensionless. It's not a thing. It's not an object. It's everywhere and nowhere because it's dimensionless. It has no limits. But basically, if you truly want to know, my hair's being red and it's still being red. Oh well. This is what the spiritual path is for, to really come to really see that, yeah, I am that. Certain profound experiences can also occur which make it a 100% fact for you. We call these awakening experiences or enlightenment experiences or Satori Samadhi, mystical experiences, whatever word you want to label it. These things can definitely knock out the doubt out the park. Even just listening to the wind right now, the rustling of the trees, the leaves. This is why we have an ego. To experience this duality, to experience this wind, to experience sitting down, to experience people in front of me, to experience a worm, nature. But of course the ego mind gets in the way. The negative part of the ego mind, I mean, and obviously troubles can occur. But I've spoken about that in my other video about what is the ego. So I hope I've said enough to make the point. I'll just do a summary now. There is no free will for the identity because the identity is a thought, a collection of memories, its perceptions. None of those things are fundamental to reality. They all come and go. They all appear and disappear, subside back into the source of itself. So if they are not always around, how can they be the chooser? How can a thought be the chooser of another thought? It's a thought too. Because remember, your idea of yourself, your identity, is also mental. It's also thoughts. If you had no thoughts, you wouldn't say that you are who you are. If you had somebody else's thoughts, then you would say you are them. So that's not fundamentally what you are. You are on one level the observer of these thoughts. So the thoughts are not a good candidate to suggest that you have free will as this identity. They don't stick around long enough. And again, a thought does not occur to another thought. A thought of a banana does not think, let me think of an apple. Both of those thoughts appear in front of this observer. But because this thinking mind is an extension of the source of it, which is free, the mind correctly has the stance that free will does exist, because it does exist, but it's just not for itself, for the source of itself, which is that pure consciousness. Because it's free, it's dimensionless, and of course the mind cannot say how the source allows for thoughts to arise. It cannot say how it allows for consciousness to be aware. It cannot say how existence exists. It can only make up stories, literally stories. But the source is that freedom. So the free will is in the source. Sounds like I'm saying ketchup sauce or something, but the free will is in the source of the mind. So know that you are that source, so you are that freedom, but it isn't for the mind that has the freedom. So trying to let's just say do certain things with the belief that you are the ego. Yes, some things will work, but some things won't work if you believe it too hard, because it's like you're putting yourself into the illusion too far. I'm basically going on to a different topic there, so I don't want to go too far on that. Yes, so if I put it concisely as much as one can on this topic, free will exists, yes, but not for the mind. The mind is what's being created from that free will, which is the source of it. The mind has an illusion of free will, a belief of free will, and it's necessary and it's beautiful. It allows for the experience of doership, of being an individual person. But the free will that it knows exists doesn't exist for itself, as in the ego, it exists for the pure source. I can talk all day, so let me stop now. If you like the video, please like the video. Have a wonderful day or evening, my fellow expressions of consciousness. Much peace to you.